All right. Hello, everybody, and thanks for taking some time to go over some cybersecurity training today. I just want to introduce Blackpoint. Now, all of you have Blackpoint currently, and uh, and so what we really want to do is make sure that you understand what you actually have and how it works, what it does,
Mm.
and have Justin Weller and uh, Brian McManahan, and I know I'm probably saying that wrong, Brian.
You're doing just fine. It's Brian McManaman, but yeah, happy to be here today
Yep,
and
that.
talk
I'm
to
so
everybody.
sorry,
It's all
McManaman.
right. He's been called worse, I'm sure. I'm sure he's been called
Absolutely.
much worse in his life. So
Well, Simtech has been working with Blackpoint for quite some time now,
long time, yeah.
and we've had nothing but great success. And your team's been phenomenal, and we're looking forward to yeah, hearing directly from you. And so, Justin, Brian, um, if nothing else, take it away.
Cool. I'll let Brian introduce himself first to you guys.
Perfect. Excellent, everyone. My name is Brian McManaman. I am one of the account executives over here at Blackpoint Cyber. Love working at a company where what our main goal is to help you all be safe and protected and all that. So yeah, looking forward to talking to everyone today. But the main person today is going to be Justin Weller here. He is a wealth of knowledge here as one of our engineers at Blackpoint, and we're very lucky to have him on our team.
Oh, that's super kind. Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, well, first off, hello everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know that it's super hard to get an hour away in 2025. May as well be a year, right? So just want to say thanks a ton and appreciate it. So for those of you that I haven't met on this call before, I might have been on a call with one or two of you in the past. My name's Justin Weller. I'm one of the solutions engineers over here at Blackpoint, but I actually come from the IT space. As a matter of fact, I sat in the chair that Robert and his team has sat in for a long time, well before I lost the hair. But yeah, definitely excited to walk through some of these things for you today. And the reality is that business is just hard to run in 2025 in general. And then when you take a look at the advent of things like, artificial intelligence, machine learning, threat actors, these people, they get up every single day and they go to work. Right? They basically automate their attacks. They find all these different ways to kind of get inside of your castle, so to speak. And then now, as we're more disparate, we've got hybrid workforces. People are bringing their own devices in. It just becomes exponentially more difficult to be able to just stay protected, if I can be candid with you. So I'm real excited to walk through this today, and I really like to talk a lot in regards to how success through the partnership between Simtech and Blackpoint really protects you, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the whole reason why the entire team on both ends get up is to basically make sure that you can work. My job and Robert and his team's job, we get up and work so you can. It's literally that simple, right? We want to make sure that we can keep you up proactively, right? 15, 20 years ago, maybe if somebody went down, there's paper files, right? We could go back, it'll slow us down a little bit, but we can still get there. That isn't the case anymore. The paper is gone, right? So Robert and his team, they do a great job of keeping you up proactively, but also protected in the event of the worst case scenario and kind of everything in between. And that's really what we want to talk about today. So before we kind of like jump into a lot of this stuff, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of who Blackpoint is. So Blackpoint Cyber, we are founded and led by former NSA computer network operations experts. Now, here's the spoiler alert here. I'm aware that if you've ever heard of a security company or a presentation, everyone for the last 10 years has been playing the NSA card, right? But I can't talk about who Blackpoint is without talking about this gentleman down here, John Murchison, our CEO and founder of Blackpoint Cyber. This is kind of what makes Blackpoint Cyber different than most other, or pretty much all of the cybersecurity companies that are out there. It's really our foundation and how we were built. So when we talk about the NSA, 95%-ish of the NSA is kind of defensive. It's hands-on keyboards, reactionary, keeping people out. John, however, was actually part of the 5% of the offensive side. He likes to make the joke that he was the bad guy for the right team, so to speak. He was doing things that if he was successful, we probably never heard anything about, but if he was unsuccessful, it's potentially news at 11 kind of stuff, right? So after doing that for about 12 years, he was sitting back and he said, I've spent 12 years of my life circumventing all these traditional IT security solutions and hiding from them and not getting caught from these nation state actors and all these different things that are out there, these various nation states that were basically not friendly to our country. What if I built a company? What if I built a product that would have found me and stopped me? And that's literally how Blackpoint Cyber got started. It originally started with just basically managed detection and response for Windows devices, and has moved into an ecosystem of products that all talk to each other, that basically protect against various different attack mechanisms and various different attack surfaces that are out there. So I want to go ahead and kind of keep this as high level as possible. But what I also want to say is that we've got a chat here as well. I want this to be as interactive as we can possibly make it. I can talk at you, but I'd much rather talk with you. So please feel free, shoot some questions in there. I'd love to try to answer them as best as I possibly can. If there are things that maybe need a little bit more of a nuance that are more specific to yours, Robert will reach out, or somebody on his team will reach out. We can get some time with me and Brian. We're super happy to do any of these things. We're not just a vendor for Robert and the SimTech team. We're actually a partner with them. We want to make sure that we can work together to make sure that your organizations are taken care of correctly. So all of that to say, this is our why. Right? Our why, we get up every day so we can deliver an ecosystem of security products based on industry standard best practices. This allows people to standardize, simplify, and have a high watermark for cyber resiliency. This allows MSPs, small to medium-sized businesses, and enterprise organizations to shift their competency as far left of boom as humanly possible. And we'll talk about the boom in a couple of minutes and kind of what that means. If you don't know what that means, you're not alone. We'll cover that here in just a couple of slides. But really, what I want to show you is some kind of things that we're seeing internally and externally, what's happening inside of this security space. So our security operations center is a group of people that literally wake up every single day, and all we do is respond to security events. That's it. We don't, do anything with like hardware maintenance. We don't do anything with network maintenance. We respond to security events on your endpoints as well as in the cloud. So just some stats here from last year. We were averaging about 25 on-premise pre-ransomware responses per week. And why do we say pre-ransomware? Well, we say pre-ransomware because our organization in the history of our company, knock on wood, has never experienced a mass ransomware event for any of our customers. And the big reason why is how our product was built. We actually identify behavior of threat actors before the attack has the ability to be able to be executed. And that's evidenced by the 55 to 65% EDR miss rate. Basically, what we're saying here is this. Endpoint detection and response, malware detection, AV detection, those are all really, really good things to have. However, threat actors do a lot of behavior that will never flag those alerts. They may be immoral, but they're just not stupid. They know how these things work. They know to hide them. And that's where our product comes in to find the behavior on that as well. So about out of our SOC last year, as we were taking responses for our partners globally, all of our alerts that we responded to, approximately 55 to 65% of those did not have a corresponding endpoint detection and response alert. So by the way, what I'm not saying, just so I can be very clear, is I'm not saying, oh, great, well, let's get rid of EDR. No, it has its place. It's good for known bad. It's good for software fighting software. It's good for known malware. However, we want to make sure that we can find the other side where they're hiding through it. Now, that's on premise, right? From the very beginning of time, when it comes to threat actors and it comes to bad actors in the cyberspace, really, they've been trying to accomplish one thing, and that's get paid. What's the best way for them to get paid? Well, get access to things that you want back. take things from you in the digital space. And so as you're going to see here, while the on-premise devices, our local machines, our local servers, our desktops, our laptops, those are still having a battle happening on it, but we've actually noticed a much larger battle moving to the cloud. Well, why is that? Well, because of our hybrid workforces. The M365s, the Office 365s, all of our data is now in OneDrive or SharePoint and on our endpoints and not on our endpoints. And so all of those things are happening inside of our emails, like we see here. BEC stands for Business Email Compromise. They hide amongst all of the noise because they're trying to get access to that data so that way they can find a way to monetize that and get you to pay them in that aspect. So we're seeing right around 200 cloud saves per week. And when we say cloud saves, or we say, on-premise saves, we have the ability to watch these areas, M365, Google Workspace, Windows, Mac machines, whether they're servers, whether they're desktops, and we identify behavior. And then what we do is, once we identify the behavior, we revoke access. We lock down the device. We identify that the cloud account has been breached. Guess what? We're going to go ahead and lock down that cloud account for you in that period of time. Why do we do that? Well, because
real quick, Justin, I think there's quite a handful of people on this meeting that have experienced that, where all of a sudden a computer doesn't work, and they call us, and we're able to see, oh, it's been locked down, and most of the time we're calling the users prior to them even realizing what's going on. But this is something that happens pretty frequently.
It does.
As far as our reaction with Blackpoint and how that works. So thank you.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. It's an interesting spot to be in at Blackpoint. Uh, we hope we never have to do anything for you guys, right? Like, our hope is like, man, it's a weird spot to be in, to say like, man, we hope you never have any problems. But unfortunately, the internet's a dangerous place. It just is. And there's a lot of bad actors that are out there. And so we're here to basically watch your six, so to speak, right? We want to make sure that we're consistently 24 hours a day monitoring these devices. And it's not just internal stats that we're seeing here. We're actually seeing that expanding the cloud landscape. It's not just your organizations that have gone to the cloud. Globally, the world has gone to the cloud, right? And there's a lot of value to that, but it also opens up the attack surface. And now, instead of being able to protect the castle, so to speak, that is your building where everything was sitting inside, well, now you got to protect the entire world from trying to get into your stuff. So business email compromise are right around 2.9, almost $3 trillion in 2023. And, this is massive. And the point that I bring this up is not as far as like a fear, uncertainty, and doubt thing. The reason why I bring this up, to my point previously, all these threat actors want to do is get paid. That's their goal. This is their quote unquote job. They get up every single day and try to scam people out of money through illicit means. And it's unfortunately profitable. It's incredibly profitable. This number goes up every single year, and it has as long as I've been in the IT space. So this is why we've kind of built what we built. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. Now, here's where it gets tough, right? As an IT professional, how do you protect from all these different things, from a small to medium-sized business to enterprise to mid-market, right? How do you protect these things? Well, there's this concept out there, what's called defense in depth. Defense in depth basically means that there is no silver bullet, right? We want to have multiple layers of defense. For instance, my house has a fence around it and a gate, right? But does that mean that I have a gate so I don't lock my doors? No, of course I'll lock my doors, right? But does that mean that I have locks on my doors so I don't lock my windows? No, of course I'll lock my windows. I close my garage door. I've got an alarm system, right? People will respond if something breaks or whatever the case may be. And that's a similar concept with security. But here's where it becomes challenging, right? We tried to solve that by building out what we call frameworks. Frameworks are explicit controls, like if you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this. Some of them are industry specific. Some of them are based on locales and governments and things of that nature. It becomes very difficult to manage this in every single area of your life. So what we did here when we were building out our product stack, we wanted to be purpose built, and we wanted to say, hey, what are 5 things that we can do? If we can do these 5 things, about 85% of any company, any business, anywhere will be what we call cyber resilient, right? There's going to be nuances based on what you do and your vertical and how big you are, right? There's no one size fits all, but this is essentially what we built here. Now, I promised you an explanation of the boom. The boom is this little thing right over here. Shout out to my graphics team for this awesome clip art here. But that's the boom. Let me tell you what the boom is in regards to cybersecurity. This is not when a threat actor starts planning their attack. This is not when they get into your network. This is not how long they've been in your network. The boom is one thing and one thing only, and that is when they execute their attack, regardless of what it is, whether it is ransoming, all of your files by encrypting them, whether it's, exfiltrating or extracting data out of your systems to ransom you later, whether it's, sending malware or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever their goal is, that is the boom. Now, keep in mind, our goal here is to keep you as far left of the boom as humanly possible. We don't want to get you there. So what are these 5 pillars? Well, the first thing is asset visibility. This is what Robert and his team do for you very, very well. They have all kinds of things that are in place to make sure that they understand what are the devices in your network? What are we protecting? What is it that you're looking for? The second thing that they do for you is they harden your network. The goal here is to make sure that they understand everything to protect and then to take the attack surface and make it as small as humanly possible by adding different things like network controls, making sure that only specific people have the ability to access what they need to access, when they need to access it. All of those things are put into place. But then the next thing is you have to have detections that you have to have threats that are detected. Why is that? Listen, I can know everything that I'm trying to protect. I can make the attack surface as small as humanly possible. But as we saw on the stats previously, there's going to be ways. There's always this cat and mouse game where threat actors are going to try to find their way in. And when that glass breaks, we need someone to be able to detect it. But not just detect it, it needs to be responded to very, very quickly. You hear stats all the time in the news of, bad actors are on average in networks for 734,000 hours. That's just not the case for most small to medium-sized businesses. Most small to medium-sized businesses, these people are trying to get in, get out, hit their attacker or attack the business, and then get that transfer of Bitcoin as quickly as humanly possible, or whatever crypto that's untraceable is. Generally, we're seeing hours to days, not weeks, months, those kinds of things. So we want to be able to attack them and get them out of your networks as quickly as possible. And that's what we do here. And we'll talk about how we do that in a couple of other slides. But last but not least, Robert and his team have this incredible incident recovery plan for you, right? The goal behind all of this is to this is your plan that in a worst case scenario, all things fail, right? The best laid plans of mice and men, so to speak, don't come to fruition. This is the insurance policy to help you kind of live to fight another day. And these are the 5 key pillars. If you know what to protect, you can close the door as much as possible. You can also detect things, respond to them quickly, and when all else fails, have the ability to get you back up and running again. You will be about 85% resilient. And I'm happy, and this is why we love working with partners like Simtech, is that they do this stuff. They do it well, and they do it every single day. So you might be asking, okay, this is all great, Justin. Why are you telling me this? Well, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the hacker timeline. This is where threat actors come into play. This is where we're going to see them inside of Pillar 3. Now, here's where it becomes very difficult from a security standpoint. And this is where the defense in depth methodology is so important. You have these 2 bookends. You've got the planning portion and you've got the complete objective portion. Those are never going to change. They're always planning. They're always trying to get to somewhere. The problem is what happens in between those bookends constantly changes. Sometimes the first thing they're going to do is drop a ransomware payload. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're going to, start scanning the network to see what other devices are on there. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're going to try to jump to other machines and see what kind of privileges. There is no direct playbook that everybody follows, right? And so what we do is, this is where our solution comes in. We have the ability to have the detection for pretty much regardless of what plan they try to execute. We can identify it early in the attack chain based on the behaviors that they're running. It alerts our 24 SOC, but the most important thing is that we respond on your behalf. We are the ones that have the ability to have the team around the clock. All we do is security, that if something happens at 2:22 in the morning, instead of sending Robert to their team, hey, here's an email with an alert that happened. No, Robert has people that we work with that partner with us, and we actually call him in the middle, not probably Robert, maybe Robert, but we call them in the middle of the night, and we actually say, hey, first and foremost, there's a fire that was in the house for this particular customer. Don't worry, we put the fire out already. We're watching the rest of the devices to make sure the fire hasn't spread. However, here's what we found. Let us know how we can help. And they begin working on your behalf, and we partner together. Robert, I saw you come off here. I kept talking, so talk to me a little bit.
No, I was gonna say, in cases where you do need to call at 2 a.m., that's been the case, but thankfully your team's good enough that usually the call comes in at 8, which we appreciate.
No, I definitely understand, right? But again, the point that I want to make here is that this is a partnership that we work with in regards to SimTech, and it's something to essentially make you guys as secure as possible. You get to sleep because we don't, right? Is kind of what it boils down to. All right, cool. So why I brought and set all of this up is I want to kind of show you a little bit about what is it that we built here at Blackpoint. So we've actually built what we call a SOC as a service platform. There are multiple pieces that are all designed, and we're going to go over each one of these pieces here in this next slide. But what I want you to show you is the products that we built, they're not built just because we think they're cool. We purpose built them to align with these, so that way we have the ability to work on things on your behalf. So what is it that we built for you, right? One comprehensive solution, one price that Robert has put into each of your guys' products, so that way you've got the ability, it's included in your monthly service deal with Robert and what you're paying for him. But essentially what we've built is we built first and foremost efficient protection. So the first thing that we've done here is what we call our managed detection and response plus remediation product. This is 24/7 active human response and remediation on your behalf. We don't try to wait. We don't try to say like, oh, well, you know what? We think something's going on. Let's go ahead and just let it wait out a little bit. No, we want to make sure that we have the ability to act first and call second, to Robert's point, right? If there's something that's clearly going on, we want to make sure that we attack it. And the reason why I bring the 225 comment up is because at the end of the day, listen, again, threat actors, immoral but not stupid. They know when American business hours are. They know when you're awake. They know when you're asleep. They're like the worst Santa Claus on the face of the planet, right? And so at the end of the day, this is traditionally when a lot of their attacks are going to be going on. Now, under this human response and remediation, there's a comprehensive software suite that comes along with it. And I want to talk to you about each one of these things and why they're important for you as the organization. The first piece of software that we have is what we call Snap Defense. This is the behavioral analysis software and identification for Windows and Mac devices. This is where we have the ability to be able to see the things that threat actors do to move around a device to try to hide themselves from those traditional endpoint detection and response technologies that are looking for that antivirus, or I'm sorry, the malware and virus software. The next piece, though, is what we talked about before, is the cloud tradecraft protection. This is for M365 and Google Workspace tenants, where we've now got the ability to basically identify behavior that threat actors are using to exfiltrate data from the cloud, whether it's the SharePoint, whether it's OneDrive, whether it's sitting in between and reading emails and waiting for that perfect time to send an email pretending to be you to send a wire transfer for $50,000 to this, whatever account it's going to be. That's what we identify on the cloud side. Now, ransomware response is another piece of technology for our Windows devices, and this is probably one of the coolest things. I'm a really big nerd, so this is like one of the things that I nerd out on a lot. And ransomware, I know I've used that word a lot, so let me level set a little bit. If you don't know what ransomware is, the whole purpose of ransomware is they will deploy a piece of software on your devices that when it's run, it will encrypt all of the files and basically make them unusable for you as the end user. Then this terrifying red box will pop up saying your files are being held ransom right now. You need to send a X amount of dollars worth of cryptocurrency to this address. And what we'll do is we'll give you a key that when you run it, you'll have the ability to go ahead and get your files back. Now, whether that ends up happening if you pay it is generally kind of 50-50 if I had to guess. But regardless, that stuff is terrifying. And so what we did is we actually built a product where we went out and we found every piece of ransomware that we could possibly find. Our team reverse engineered that ransomware where we identified all the locations that it's looking for, the file types that it's looking for, and we built out a product where we put files inside of those locations and named them so that way they would be at the highest level, the beginning of those searches according to that software, that if any of those files get moved, changed in any way, it will automatically kill the process that tried to move it inside of the system. So we stop the ransomware dead in its tracks. That triggers an investigation by our SOC, which will then immediately kick that threat actor out. And now we can go in and respond and know that something's going on. One of the big reasons why there's never been a mass ransomware attack is because of this product right here. We also offer something called Identity Response for Azure. Now, you may or may not know this, but your email address now is no longer just for email. It's used for access. For instance, if I've got Microsoft 365 accounts, guess what? I can log into various websites with that Microsoft 365 account. It doesn't mean that I access my email from LinkedIn or from any of these other sites. It's just saying that, hey, I'm going to use my Microsoft identity to prove that I am who I am so I get access to this. Well, imagine having that for 10, 12, 15 different emails and your identity being compromised. Well, where do I begin? Where do I start my search? And this is the whole purpose for Identity Response for Azure. This is where we now have the ability to add contextual data to say, hey, guess what, Brian? Your account was used in a malicious way, but not only was it used in a malicious way and we revoke access for that account to log into any of those websites, but we can also say, hey, by the way, it was used on LinkedIn. So that way there's some contextual analysis and it really helps for that incident response. Managed EDR. The endpoint detection and response software that I've been talking about, we're not saying get rid of it. We actually like that telemetry as well. And so we have gotten the information from Robert where it talks to our systems, and our SOC will also take a look at all of the malware alerts and the virus alerts that pop up. And we take that as contextualized data to identify and kind of create the whole picture of the story. Now, Managed Defender for Endpoint, that's its kind of own thing by itself that is helpful, but really, even if that's not something that's turned on inside of your organization, it's more of like an extra, hey, that's cool to have, as opposed to, hey, this really is something that it's a different type of EDR. Let me put it that way. That's the easiest way to put it. It's just a different type of endpoint detection and response from Microsoft, which is, not generally better or worse than what's on your machines right now, but it's something that we also integrate with. Dark web scan is something that basically there's information sometimes on the dark web. And while nobody can clean it off, we like to be able to let you know that it's there. Anything new that comes up in those, we can actually alert Robert on that stuff as well. Vulnerability management, again, helping you reduce the attack surface as much as possible. And then we have what we call managed application control. Managed application control is a really, really cool product. We have a lot of data here at Blackpoint. We actually have the ability to know exactly what type of software these bad actors are using to use their attacks. Why don't we just block those by default, right? And so what we've done is we've created the ability for all of these applications to automatically be blocked by default. And the second that somebody tries to use one of those pieces of software, it immediately triggers a SOC investigation. But on top of all of that, the software is great. But really, the most important part of what we do here is the dedicated teams. We have SOC analysts that are analyzing the alerts as they come in. We have threat hunters, which are proactively taking a look at data to make sure that people aren't hiding and we're not missing anything. And then we have our adversary pursuit group, which provides excellent threat intelligence reporting on the new and emerging threats that are coming out, and sometimes the old threats that are resurgent inside of the market, right? Just because something hasn't been used for a year and a half doesn't mean that they're not going to start using it again because no one was looking for it for so long, right? So that's what our APG team is going to be there for you as well. So in regards to kind of the product lineup, product offering, that is kind of the high level overview of what we do at Blackpoint, why we do what we're doing here at Blackpoint. And I know I've said a ton of words at this point. I know I've kind of given you guys a lot of water through a fire hose, so to speak. I want to pause here. What are some questions that you have? Robert, what are some things that you'd like me to poke in on a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. It looks like we have a question in from Joe.
Okay.
And at this point, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute and go ahead and speak up. But Joe asks, does Blackpoint assist with or provide reports that go to the government in the event of a compromise involving sensitive data?
Great question. So the short answer is no, we don't provide a detailed report. However, our SOC and our team consistently works with auditors, incident response in those kinds of breaches and those kinds of things. We work with insurance companies, all kinds of things. If we have data that can help, we are so happy to be a part of that process in that unfortunate scenario. Was that kind of what you were looking for, Joe? I wanted to make sure that you were aware that, like, I didn't have a blanket yes to that, but we definitely have, work with people on those things as well.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Great question. Great question. What are some other questions that you guys have? No? I nailed it? That was it? All right, cool. Well,
No, so
So I have a
Justin,
question, if
go
that's
ahead,
okay.
Tom.
So how do we know that all this stuff is in place? It's not hardware, it's software, right?
correct. Yep, that's a great question. And Robert, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So that's where the SimTech team comes in, auditing your computers to make sure that those licenses are active and being used. We do have reporting from Blackpoint that'll tell us exactly how many workstations, and then our software as well. And so if those numbers don't align, then we put in tickets internally and make sure that those are up to date. Now, if that's something that you would like us to review a little bit deeper in our technology reviews that we have, we can for sure do that.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm taking credit for your answer, Robert. So yeah, no problem. Glad to have answered that for you. No, I'm just joking.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur, and Justin, thank you for the plethora of information you just. I don't know if you're reading from a teleprompter, but if not, man, kudos to you, because that was.
There is no teleprompter.
Arthur,
I am just
Arthur,
a dude that
this
really loves this product. I love it.
Hey,
but
Arthur, I'll invite you sometime so you can see him on stage. He's fantastic.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be really cool. Well, Robert knows this question, and similar to the question that just kind of came up, it seems like a lot of this stuff happens in the back end, which is great. And so as a business owner and operator, it's just like, I want to make sure my team is safe and secure.
Yep.
All the stuff that you just went through that you're an expert in, like, I don't want to know it. I want to be aware of it. But rather, there's an expertise as having the background. Is there anything that I need to do or should prepare my team for as a SimTech customer that would make this experience better or allow for like us to be able to really utilize these services that you're providing?
Yeah. I can start, and then Robert, I'll pass it on to you just in case I'm missing anything. Is that cool? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the short answer is listen, similar to how you work with SimTech and their team, if you notice that there's a problem, you reach out to them. But most of the time, and this is where IT gets really fun, right? The better you are at what you do, the more your customers wonder, well, what the heck am I paying you for? I don't have any problems, right? It's because you got good IT people, right? And that's kind of the way that we look at security here, right? In this scenario, for you as a small business owner or a medium-sized, whatever it is, no news is really good news when it comes to security, right? And that's the thing. So we are kind of the break glass. Like when the glass breaks, man, if you're hearing from us, the thing that you're going to want to know is that, hey, we stopped it in the middle. And here's a report. We actually give Robert an incident report of the findings, and here's how we found it, and here's what we noticed, and here's what we identified inside of there as well. And I think this actually might be a pretty good segue into the MDR report, Robert, that to kind of walk you through a little bit of what you can receive and get walked through, and just kind of how to review some of that stuff. Would that be maybe the right way to go about this, you think, Robert?
Yeah. So Arthur, when we meet together, I had those security reports at the end, and here's one right here. Is this debadged right here, Justin?
Is this what?
Debadged, or I mean, it's
yeah. This right here is all dummy demo data, by the way. So your numbers will look very different and hopefully significantly less. But as you could guess, in a demo environment, we run alerts and lots of them every day. So yours is probably not going to look as deep as this. But what I want to do is I want to kind of show you what this stuff looks like. But go ahead, Robert.
No, this is exactly what I was going to bring up. Is when we meet together, we get these reports monthly, and typically there's nothing in them, right? Typically the report will have, it'll show how many times somebody, was pinging your network, and there's a lot of data that we can see where those threat actors were just kind of trying to poke a little bit. But if they did get through, then the report will have quite a bit more. But
Correct.
Justin, if you wouldn't mind just going through that report real fast and helping us learn how to read it.
Sure. So the first thing I want to highlight here is pretty much page one, right? Page one is essentially what I talked to you about before. This is our threat intel team. This is just some information that you can read on a monthly basis. This is just some of the stuff that we're seeing. We try to kind of run this quarterly generally, and just kind of give some good information on what's happening. But when it comes to the meat and potatoes of what it is that you're looking for, it's essentially going to be this page right here. 90% of the people on this call are really going to care about this as opposed to the data behind it. The rest of it is basically just kind of a double click on the data that you're seeing on this particular page right here. So what you're going to basically see is a summary document. Okay, this summary document is essentially going to be done on two sides. The first one is the reporting period. The other one is a lagging 12-month service history. Okay, now what I want you to do here is I want you to take a look at this funnel from top to bottom. The first thing I want to talk about is the analyze events. Basically, this right here is just saying we analyzed in this period 100, let's say, call it 200,000 pieces of information. This could be from cloud response. It could be from the Windows or Mac devices. It could be from managed application control. It could be from an EDR alert, whatever it is. The all-encompassing data set that we took was this particular number right here. Out of that all-encompassing number, we run those through what we call analyzer rules, right? And this will kind of show you a little bit of why it's so important to have people like Robert and Blackpoint. Imagine having to go through 200,000 pieces of data and trying to figure out what needs to be looked at, what doesn't need to be. I mean, what a nightmare that is. So what we do is we actually run those through what we call we run those through analyzer rules. So once we run those through analyzer rules, we can kind of distill a lot of this information, because here's the thing, a lot of the behavior that's done by threat actors, it looks benign. It looks like legitimate IT admin activity. So we're going to say, hey, this by itself, or this by itself may not be a thing. But if this happens, or this happens, and this happens, okay, now we've got to kind of take a look at it. And so we utilize that behavior and those analyzer rules to do what we call detections. These are things that have basically hit our process rules. They assign a risk score to them, right? Not all things and not all rules are created equal. There are some things that are just so blatantly malicious that they get some massively high score, right? And then there's things that are like, that might be a thing. We should probably take a look into that kind of thing, and everywhere in between. So out of that detection, this is where our analysts have the ability to go ahead and start taking a look and running a quick detection. These are rules that have been triggered that have a threat tactic and technique attributed to it. From there, this is where we start instigating the hunt. Okay, this is where humans are taking a look. Our SOC is running these things down. So out of this, based on the different.
Hey, Justin, real quick, what's a SOC?
I'm sorry, Security Operations Center. Those are our people.
Perfect. Thanks.
That's the humans. I'm so sorry. I know I used a lot of jargon and I tried the best
No,
that I
you're
could
good, you're good.
to do that. Thank you. Good question. Good question. So that's where our Security Operations Center are human beings, right? Our frontline defenders, our threat hunters, our level 2 team, our level 3 escalations team, our command watches leaders during those time frames. And these are people that are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We use a follow the sun methodology. So no matter where you're at, it's always going to be someone that's watching the data and your organization. But this is where we've actually triggered an investigation. Humans are digging this down and running it down. And then we have the response. Based on the investigations that we had, how many times did we have to do something? Did we isolate a device? Did we revoke access to a particular account? Did we do a number of different things, right? So that's where it is. Now, 218 in a reporting period, that's a lot, right? Hopefully that number is 0, right? But obviously demo environment, we are actively showing human beings what we do. So we're triggering a lot of our stuff in here, protect. So this is essentially going to be the high level piece here. Another piece is just kind of walking through the different services, and Robert can talk to you about what's active inside of your organization. And then as you can see here, as we continue to go down, all of these different pieces of information are really just different types of tactics and techniques that are following this reporting period. So it's more of a double click on the data that is actually happening in the type of data that we're dealing with. So that's like a high level overview. Was that kind of what you guys were looking for there, Robert?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Because the report, if I'm honest, Justin, we just skip to this page, and then should there be additional questions, then we dive deeper. But yeah, this as we review with all of you, this is the page that we typically just jump to and go through that. But it looks like Becky had a quick question. Are our phones protected when using the same business software, or do we need to have something installed on our phones?
Yeah, good question. So the battle is generally not on the phone today, right? There's not a whole lot of data that's being accessed on the phone, so to speak. Now we're accessing data from our phones, right? And a lot of those behaviors, for instance, like email compromise, right? Well, the behavior that threat actors are going to use are going to be the same regardless. 9 times out of 10, they're trying to get into the back end, or they're trying to set up their own type of access into the data or the exchange data or whatever the case may be. So there's no like Blackpoint agent that sits on those phones. And so so that's the short answer to that question there.
Yeah, so the computers that have the software, those are protected.
Correct.
And then,
yeah. So like, Windows, Mac devices, email accounts, SharePoint accounts, identities.
So Arthur just posted a question. Arthur, I don't know if you want to unmute and ask, or if you want me to read it.
Yeah, sure. Just had a follow-up question as we were looking through all those things. Thanks again for definitely more clear. We're actually going through a process right now where all of our hardware is getting cycled out and replacing Apple hardware. I have a background with Apple, and I'm familiar with the term MDM, which is mobile device management.
Yeah.
Really tracking the hardware from there. And so, but I know whenever I'm working with SimTech and now hearing from you, MDR is brought up more often. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm left feeling a bit confused. So I'm just trying to get some clarity of,
Yeah.
is there a difference between MDM and MDR?
There
Is
is.
that all kind of bundled together?
Yeah.
Is that partnership that's being
This is
happened?
defense in depth. So what you're walking through is why defense in depth is such a unique thing, right there. There's no like, oh, well, I've got EDR, so I'm good. There's no like, oh, I've got MDR, so I'm good. They have different pieces that are there. The big thing about MDR is that we actually are the human beings that are watching the managed detection. So we detect when something is happening and respond to when something is happening. Now, MDM is still important, but that's kind of a technology that goes in pillar 2, which is network hardening, right? MDM is where you can apply policies that allow only specific access, right? Like, hey, you're a friend of mine and you're watching my house for the weekend. I'm going to give you a key and the alarm code for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you no longer need to watch my house, I'm going to change my alarm code, not because I don't trust you, just because it's just we can't have that many people walking out there, right? Now, does that mean that I turn off my alarm service? No. I'm still going to have my alarm service, right? So does that kind of help you understand the difference between the two? We detect the illicit behavior and respond to it, whereas MDM is more like managing the devices themselves, and it's similar to software that Robert uses for your endpoints at the exact same time to manage some of those things. But again, they're still kind of different.
Yeah, definitely understand the differences between them. And I guess, Robert, we can talk separately too, just over how does MDM work and look with, Blackpoint and all that stuff. And
So yeah, just follow up question, Justin. You probably get this question quite a bit. You don't have like an app to put on mobile devices, right?
That's
So
correct.
if we wanted to put it on our an iPad or an iPhone, why isn't that such a concern?
Again, the big reason why is because a lot of the stuff is going to be happening back inside of the system anyway. They're trying to get access, and it's very hard to move around on an Apple device, right? There's no like remote access to Apple devices and phones, and as a general rule, they can try to get telemetry off of there, which may get them access into like an M365 or something of that nature. But as a general rule, it's just the way that it works is going to be different than like an executable that runs on a Windows or a Mac iOS device. Those are going to be very limited in what they can access from a handheld device versus something with a full-blown operating system like Sequoia or Windows or anything of that nature.
okay.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, it's more like an entry point as opposed to somewhere they can stay. And so that's the biggest thing, right? So the somewhere they can stay is going to be like in your cloud environments as well as like a Windows or a Mac device. It's one of the reasons why like we don't disregard network data, but we used to keep all of it, and we find that it's actually a lot of noise because you can't sleep on a wire. You know what I mean? Like you're hiding in plain sight in the noise on the devices themselves.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
Yep. Long answer to a short question. Sorry about that.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think I still have questions over just the MDM situation as it relates to SimTech, like the holistic aspect of it, but we're going through Harvard version, so I think it's there. I'm just getting all the names and terminologies right, MDM.
We love our 3-letter acronyms in IT, man. Good luck. I still haven't figured them all out, and I've been doing it for a decade.
For sure. Well, cool. Yeah, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. What are some other questions? I know we've got about 12 more minutes here.
Well, this is Mike Fall.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what are the trending access points for bad actors into networks. Nice.
Good question. We're seeing a lot of third-party VPNs being used. That's something, especially around Super Bowl time, right? NordVPN goes on there and hey, you're not secure if you don't have a VPN. So everyone goes and buys a VPN, and that's something that we're seeing. There's also this thing called MFA fatigue. I'm not sure if you know what MFA stands for, but it stands for multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication basically means one of three things. It's something something you are, or something you have. and you want 2 of those 3. And so, for instance, like multi-factor authentication, Arthur's, I'm so over MFA. I know it's a necessary evil though. So like when we talk about like, let's say logging into my email address, right? Well, I need to know a password, right? But then I also need to have something on my phone that sends me an alert that I click. So there's 2 forms of authentication, not just I know the password, or I can look at it and it can use my face, right? Or my thumbprint or something of that nature. So something I am plus something that I know or something that I have, which is like a phone, right? Well, even that's not foolproof. That's great to have, but even then it's not foolproof, right? Like if somebody were to go in and say, like this, do you guys remember when Uber got breached a few years back? Like Uber had this huge like data leak that ended up happening. And the reason why was what they did is they did what was called MFA fatigue attack, which is basically where somebody found out the password, was able to log in, and every time they input that password, it would send an alert to that person's phone. And they were like, the first one, they were like, oh no. And then the second one right after, they were like, no. And they just kept spamming that person's phone until they were so tired of the alert. They were just like, oh, yes, already. And that's how they ended up getting into that particular account. It ended up being a developer account that had all this data on it and stuff of that nature. So that's something that we see that's relatively prevalent. And here's the truth. The truth of the matter is this: threat actors believe that employees are going to be the easiest way in. Always. They're always waiting to trick end users.
So I have Microsoft Authenticator.
Yep.
To get in through our network and VPN.
Great.
And I know I get a handful of alerts that I say, no, it's not me.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious if we can track where those are coming from, and maybe they do have one of my passwords that they're trying to get into. What kind of information can we glean from that?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be stuff from Microsoft Logs that are going to be able to do that for you, no problem. What I would also say then is as you're seeing those particular alerts that are coming up, something that's really, really helpful, and this is kind of like low-hanging fruit, and the first step that I would always take whenever I see something like that happening is just go in and change your password. Log out of all devices and change your password. If it has been breached somewhere, it's better to be safe than sorry, right? And just go in there and change it. Also, another good rule of thumb is we don't want to keep reusing passwords, right? We don't want to use the same password for like home accounts and work accounts and those kinds of things, because that way it's just kind of one account to rule them all, so to speak, right? And then, and here's where it gets unique, right? And here's why that's such an important thing. And I know I'm going to get off my soapbox here in a second, but if you have one account for multiple things, like let's say 30% of them have multi-factor and the other 70% don't. Each of those accounts that don't have it, they can go into all of these major sites and just say, well, does the account work here? 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 If they get into 5 different accounts, they can actually go into the profiles and start piecing together data that's important for them. And now they can build a story and pretend that I'm Michael. Right. And so that's kind of one of the reasons behind that right there. While there is no silver bullet, this is one of the things that they actively do. They can go on social media and start finding bits and pieces of data about you. It's kind of crazy what they do, but the whole purpose behind it is to try to get inside of the organization and monetize that data in some way, shape, or form. Kind of answered a question that I don't think you asked, but that would be something that that I would probably do first and foremost. And can that data be tracked? The short answer is yeah.
I'm just, and the next thing I read a long time ago, when you're in a situation where you get hacked, sometimes you want to consider not shutting the door right away. You might want to consider what they're trying to get and gain before you lock them out.
I don't know that I don't agree or disagree with that. Like as far as like a hard yes or a hard no, I'm sure there's probably situations that are there. I would argue though, generally, like I would argue that it's like, well, you know, it's just a small fire, so let it burn. Like, I don't know. I want to put the fire out, right? Like I don't know, right? I'd rather put the fire out, find out how it got started and close that door and let someone else figure out why they're in their house. Do you know what I mean? That's just kind of the way that I would probably argue. I don't know that that's right or wrong per se, but that's just kind of my opinion.
An old Chinese general that once that times talked about misdirection and giving them bad information, you know, serving that up on a platter. I don't know if there's a way to do that or anything, but it's
Sure.
just a philosophy.
No, I definitely understand the philosophy behind it. And that's why we require full deployment across the entirety of the network, right? Like in a situation where something like that's happening and they're like, oh, look over here. We're like, yeah, we're looking over there, but we're also here too. You know what I mean? So yeah, good question.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. What are some other questions? that we
Another
got?
thing to piggyback on there, Justin, is
Sure.
you mentioned earlier that you guys have the dark web scans,
Yes.
and just letting all of you know that we can run those, and we do run those, and
Yeah.
you can expect those in our meetings together. We'll present that data to see, okay, has something been compromised that's found on the dark web, and
That's right.
and if there are passwords that are the same as you're using, right, they're active passwords, then yeah, we're going to make sure that we help you change those and get to a better spot.
Yep.
So we have about 5 more minutes if there's any other questions.
This has been super fun, everyone. Thanks for having me on. If there's no more questions, just wanted to make sure I slid that in before we get going here.
All right, it looks like we've covered it. And Justin and Brian, thanks so much for your time and making this happen. It's been insightful, and we sure appreciate you and your team watching over all of us.
We love it. We love it. We appreciate you guys too. You guys are a great partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being able to do this. Robert and team, thank you so much for putting it together. And obviously, Justin, thank you. Wealth of knowledge on here for everybody. So really appreciate that too.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to give everybody 4 minutes of their time back.
All right. 4 more minutes. Let's go.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again.
Have a great one, team. Bye, everyone.
Bye.